should you play Machina Shadow or Pure Necromancy Shadow? So when Heroes of Shadowverse was released, both decks were originally a bit hidden by Blood success, both Evolved Mono and Wrath. But now it's finally Shadow's time, it's having great success in GCG. So both of these decks run similar cards but they have a different game plan, so we are going to dive into it and see which one you should run. So let's start with Machina Shadow. So this is the list that won GCG on the 29th. And this is a control deck when you try to play 10 Machina cards in order to activate Aena. She lets you build a giant board thanks to her token the Joy Secured, buffing all of your Machina cards on the board, as well as healing you and giving you a leader shield. And it's notably buffing this roly-poly token that has this damage cut. It's going to 1-5 with the Joy Secured, so it takes 3 hits if you don't have any Bane to remove it. You can tutor Aena thanks to Shard Gold, which is also very effective if you are going second, since it would only cost 2. And then your goal is to either stall until you have 20 shadows to have Lubel, which is 13 damage by yourself, if you can get all the VV Faunas to go face. Or you can also stall until Technoloord on turn 9, in order to deal a big ton of damage, 15 to 20 damage, split between enemies. So preferably you are waiting for your opponent to have a clear board in order to play Technoloord and finish them. And you can also just play it early as a removal and draw, in order to advance your condition for Aena. In this build you also run Goddess of Compassion, so it's usually run at 2 copies instead of 3. And most of the time you're not really using her for the ramp, but actually for the transmute version, where you can just remove an opponent's board and increase your max defense, which goes with the wall control aspect of the deck. So the advantages of the deck is that it's pretty consistent, you have a lot of ways to tutor Machina cards, thanks to Overboard or Shard Gold, so you're getting to Aena pretty fast. You have lots of ways to deal with the early board, Technoloord, you have Zombo Droid, which is Rush Bane. You also have Succession of Balance, which is 2 Machina cards in one, as well as dealing with an opponent's follower. But the main problem is that the deck cannot really end the game whenever they want, because even if your Aena board survived, and you're able to get some face damage, then it means you don't have any board space for Lubel. So most often it will give some time for your opponent to assemble their combo and try to kill you. Even if the token from Joy Secured is actually pretty awful, thanks to the leader shield to survive most of the combos, but sometimes it's not enough. Also, because Lubel is kind of a plan B in the deck, you don't really run many copies of Viscaria and Atem, but we'll come back to that in the Pure Necromancy build. So for Pure Necromancy, this is a list that I got Grandmaster with 2 days ago. I almost only use this deck, I love it, I love the flow of it. And so, contrary to the control deck that is Machina Shadow, this is more of a combo-oriented deck, where your goal is to evolve Mint as soon as possible. When you play here, you're gonna Burial Rite and search for Lubel. And now the shadows that you spent for Necromancy are given back, the first time you do it every turn. So the goal is just to draw a lot of cards, thanks to Poison Apple, or Night Terror, or Izunia to find Mint. Then, with just 10 shadows, you can play Lubel, evolve there to go for a big storm turn. And now that you have 20 shadows consumed, you can easily play Viscaria or Atem for even more damage, trying to close out the game. And because you can run 3 copies of Atem and Viscaria, you can actually discard these for either Mint or Elena. Elena is played to give you Luna, which is an evolution point recovery. And this deck does need it, because you're going to need 1 evolution for Mint, but then also evolutions for Lubel. You're often going to want to back-to-back Lubel with this deck, since you're going to have the shadows for it. So you need to invest a bit more time into actually getting those evolution points. And that's why we also run 2 Fall Grace, where the first one is used for tempo, and the second one will be heal, but also evolution recovery. And because there are not enough room to also play enough Machina cards to activate Aena, we just run her with Iolon, just to have a draw engine, and we can later discard the recovery with Izunia's Reconstruction. So Pure Necromancy is very explosive, it doesn't really have any board space problem. Even when Amaterasu or Tsukuyomi are getting revived, you can just give them the Poison Apple and give them Rush and Bane, trade something, and then you have the room for Lubel. But sadly, the main weakness will be in the early game, where you don't have any more tools for tempo. You're often going to play a passive Aena just to have the ward. And Punisher of the Undead, it's a rush, but you don't truly need the shadows that they give you in this deck, so it's really used just for removal, and something that you can discard with Elena, since it's a shadow card. Going second, you have a ton of healing, thanks to Ahsoka and Shiori, and thanks to Izunia's reconstruction. But going first, you might just lose to tempo. So decks are not good just by themselves. They exist within a metagame, which is all the other decks that it's going to face, and gonna have to win against. So let's see what are the matchups for both of these decks, starting with Machina Shadow. So first we have Mono Blood. I would say the matchup is slightly favored for Machina Shadow, since thanks to Arena, you're going to have a board full of wards, and a leader shield on top of that. So it's pretty hard for them to get the mono TK through that. Of course, more and more builds are starting to run Case Cracked, just for this scenario. But if you're at 20 HP, it's still 2 PP that they're going to have to spend, and they're still going to need to find the damage on the side. Also, to deal with Lion and Alfie, especially the 5-5 form, especially they evolve it to 7-7, you're going to either need Goddess for the -5/-5, or tokens that got buffed with Aina spell, so that they have enough HP to survive the clash 3 damage. Next, this is Wrath, so this is an unfavored matchup. Just because Diablo Sedon evolve, it destroys all of your board, they just ignore your Machinas. They also have Silner Snipe to remove the Aina's shield, so even if you can heal a lot, eventually when they play Chimera, they're going to heal back and you're never really killing them. You cannot like put enough pressure to actually finish them, and they have like so many ways to reset your board. They have Garnet Rondo, they have Mastema, so even if you can heal a lot, this is a pretty doomed matchup. Next up against Ladika Forest. So I would say this matchup is really in the hands of the Ladika player actually. They need to make the right decisions with board lock, especially with Michelle. Sometimes they might have the option to just let you play your first Machina cards, but never clearing them, so you're never getting to 10 and never getting Aina. They can also make it so that on the Ladika turn, they evolve Lily over the Roly Poly, so it removes your best ward. There's also United Resolve for that. So if you manage to put up enough pressure, or if they cannot find a solution for Aina's leader shield, it might be winnable. But recently, Ladika builds have been adapting. For instance, putting the Queen Babs, the thing that gives you 2 Rush Banes, in order to be able to pass many wards on the Reese turn. So I think on paper it's favored for Ladika, but it's really hard for them to play. So you can expect to win it on ladder. Next we have Amulet, and this is a slightly favored matchup, mainly because you have many ways to heal all of the damage we're going to do. Angel's Banish could be annoying early on, but then they really struggle to clear the full board of Aina, especially if you put it back, etc. So make sure to keep enough healing to recover after the Angel Trust Mute has been destroyed. Maybe keep the Rushbane Droid for it, and you should be good. For most of the other rogue decks, you have a favored matchup. Just doing your game plan is going to be enough to win them. They're just not going to lethal, for instance, Spell Boost or Sword, etc. But be wary of one, it's actually Big Dragon. You're not putting enough pressure to not let them ramp, and after that, with Vola, they're going to reset your board. Then they have a lot of healing. The Voracious Dragon is going to be very annoying. It's going to block having any good turn with Lubel. And in my experience, it's been a pretty hard matchup to win. So be wary of this one. It might pick up later on. Now let's move on to the matchups for Necromancy Shadow. So against Mono, I would say it's actually an even matchup, since you have both the same kill turn on turn 7, with you going back-to-back Lubel, or Lubel into Atem, and them going for Mono. So it's actually a go-first matchup. Remember that to deal with Lion and Alfie, you might have to crash some Viscarias, or evolve Lubel over it, and give up on the 5 damage. Atem is also a perfect answer since it's surviving, but it's pretty late in the game. And there's also the chance that you cannot clear the Metallic Bat, since you have less ways to answer the early game, so you might let them get an eye roll with Dancer and Gadel, and just having a lot of evolves even before the evolution turn. So if possible, really keep the Sun and Moon spell to rush into Metallic Bat, not leave it on the board for too long. But even if you take a lot of damage, it's possible to come back. If you go Lubel, trade Symphonas and Hellfire, all of these things have between 2 to 4 HP, so it's not that hard to clear. Next for Wrath, it's actually a slightly favored matchup, since they're going to have to deal to themselves 7 damage to activate Wrath, and if you're able to set up Mint early on, before they start healing, just the first Lubel will be 13 damage and will be enough to finish them. There are some games where you can scam them with that. Even if you cannot, the fact that you have more Viscaria in the build to spam so many heals, will help make a big difference, since you'll be able to keep up even when they play the first Chimera. And you don't care as much about your board being removed in this deck. Then for Ladika, this is a pretty annoying matchup, since it's really telegraphed when you want to Lubel, so they're going to just play Lily and try to block all the Fauna Storm damage if they have it. And then you need to spend this first 20 shadows, but you don't really want to waste all of your damage. So if they play well, this could be very tricky. But then if you are able to resolve the first Lubel, then Atem in Viscaria, they are not affected by Lily, and it's harder for Ladika to boardlock you. So there are more chances to kill you before they resolve their turn and have all of their costs reduced. Also, if they ever try to just play Ladika and just go for the storm back to back, you have tons of healing with Izunia, with Lubel, so it's not that big of a problem. You can just punish that play. So Big Dragon, it's a bit less problematic for Necromancy Shadow, since Big Dragon is going to heal for something like 5 with All That Glitters or with Worm Goddess. So if you're able to push for 13 with Lubel on turn 6, and then you have Atem in Viscaria for 11 more, most of the time is going to be enough to break through our defense. Also, because you are running Apple to have Bane Rush, you actually don't struggle too much to remove the Degenerate Dragon Ward. And lastly, this is one that matters, but if you are playing Necromancy into Machina Shadow, I think the Necromancy side is favored. The Arena's board is pretty annoying, and the shield is protecting you from starting your turn with Atem. But Viscaria is just amazing in this matchup, able to clear 2 wards, trade into the Roly-Poly and remove it, as well as pushing damage and potentially coming back from the Faunas and Lubel. And usually, in the Shadow Mirror, the first player to win is usually the first one that plays Lubel, because since they deal so much damage, they put the other player into a defensive position where they have to first answer the Lubel and then try to develop their damage. But then they have to answer to the new threats and they're just never really coming back. So in conclusion, which deck should you run? Well, first I would say that it depends on your playstyle. Machina Shadow is definitely easier to play, since most of the time you just have to play Curve and develop an optimal board, and watch as your opponent is struggling to clear it. Whereas with this combo kind of deck, you really have to manage your end space well. You need to know when to use combo pieces to answer the board and when to ignore it. And you often need to calculate damage over 2 turns before you're going to die. So this is a more risky kind of play, but more rewarding. If you compare the matchups, then Machina is better into Mono Blood and worse into Wrath, whereas Necromancy is better into Wrath and worse into Mono Blood. As long as the meta is not filled with a board-based deck that need you to absolutely remove a certain card during the first 4 turns, I think that Necromancy is better. If you need to actually keep up with the board, then Machina Shadow would be better. And it's not really a surprise that when you look at the recent GCG result, the Machina list is starting to look a lot and more like the Necromancy build. They're starting to include Mint, they're now playing 3 copies of Viscaria, so I wouldn't be surprised to see players shift to the pure build, or find a list that is a perfect hybrid that has the best of both worlds. So that's it for today. Deck lists for both of these decks will be down in the description, with the Shadowverse portal code. If you stayed until now, thank you. Remember to put a like and a comment. It really helps out the channel. And if you want any other meta-analysis, like which deck should you run between Wrath and Mono Blood, then don't hesitate to tell me. I'll see what I can do. So thanks for watching, bye bye!